Let me ask you something. When was the last time you truly walked away from something or someone without looking back? You see, people expect closure. They expect explanations. They expect drama, anger, and long messages filled with emotion. That's the game they know. And when you play it, you lose. Because here's the truth. You don't win by proving your worth to someone who never valued you. You win by realizing you never had to prove it in the first place. Most people think blocking someone is power, that cutting them off will make them miss you. That silence is a weapon to make them regret. But that's where they go wrong. Silence isn't about making them think of you. It's about setting yourself free. When you stop explaining, stop reacting, stop chasing, you shift the power dynamic entirely. Suddenly, they are the ones wondering. They are the ones questioning. Not because you blocked them, not because you begged, but because you become someone they can no longer reach. And that's the real victory. Because by the time they realize what they lost, you won't even be looking back. And if this message speaks to you, I want to hear your story. Have you ever taken your power back by walking away? What happened when you finally stopped chasing? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because your experience might be the one that helps someone else break free today. 1. Silence isn't meant to make them regret. It's meant to set you free. Let me make something clear. Silence is not a weapon. It's a release. Too many people think going silent is a tactic, a way to make someone regret, to make them wonder, to force them to chase. But that's not power. That's still seeking validation. That's still playing their game. And as long as you're playing their game, you've already lost. Do you think blocking them makes a statement? That if you remove them from your life, they'll suddenly realize your worth? That cutting them off will teach them a lesson? It won't. Because here's the truth. People don't learn when you try to teach them. They learn when life forces them to. Are you blocking them? It gives them an answer. Oh, they're hurt. Oh, they're still thinking about me. Are you writing a long message explaining why you're leaving? It gives them closure. It lets them walk away comfortably. But what happens when you do nothing? When you disappear, not as a game, not as a tactic, but because you've outgrown them. That's when their mind spirals. That's when they start questioning. Not because you're trying to make them, but because they no longer have access to your energy. Most people don't want to walk away. They want a reaction. They want the other person to acknowledge the pain, to admit their mistakes, to apologize, to chase. But let me ask you something. What if they never do? What if they move on, never looking back? What if they laugh unbothered while you sit there refreshing their profile? Does that mean your pain is invalid? Does that mean you were wrong? No. It means you were waiting for something that was never yours to begin with. And the moment you realize that, the moment you stop seeking closure, stop needing them to see your worth, that's when you truly set yourself free. Don't block them to prove a point. Don't go silent hoping they'll reach out. Don't sit there waiting for their regret to arrive. Instead, shift your focus. If you just broke up, don't check their page, check into the gym. If you lost your job, don't waste time complaining. Build a better future. If someone disrespected you, don't explain why it hurt. Walk away. When they look back, make sure you're too busy moving forward to even notice. Because here's the truth. They are not thinking about you. They are thinking about themselves. The same way they did when they hurt you. The same way they did when they dismissed your feelings. The same way they did when they assumed you would always be there. That's how people work. They don't care when they make you suffer. They only care when they start suffering. And that's exactly why your silence should never be about them. It should be about you. If your silence is meant to make them regret, you're still waiting. You're still attached. You're still stuck in a cycle where their reaction determines your value. That's not freedom. That's not power. That's just another form of begging. True silence, real emotional detachment, is when you don't care whether they regret it or not. When their absence doesn't feel like a void, but a weight lifted off your shoulders. That's when you know you've won. When you try to prove your worth, you put yourself below them. When you react, you show them they still have power over you. When you explain, you give them control over the narrative. But when you simply move forward, without anger, without resentment, without a need to be seen, you take back everything they thought they had. They expect an explosion. They expect you to beg. They expect you to fight. But what happens when there's nothing? No words, no reaction, no sign you even care anymore. That's when they start questioning. That's when they start doubting. That's when regret hits. Because people don't fear losing you. They fear losing control over you. If someone truly valued you, you wouldn't have to convince them. If someone truly respected you, you wouldn't have to demand it. If someone truly loved you, you wouldn't have to chase them. So stop chasing. Stop explaining. Stop waiting for them to see what they should have seen from the start. Instead, become the person they will never have access to again. Not because you blocked them, not because you deleted their number, but because you've leveled up so much they don't even recognize you anymore. You become untouchable, not by making them miss you, but by making yourself too busy winning to notice their absence. One day, they might wake up and realize what they lost. Maybe they'll scroll through old messages. Maybe they'll type your name into that search bar. Maybe they'll even reach out, testing the waters, checking if you're still there. But by the time they do, you'll be too far ahead to care. Because the truth is, they never deserved access to you in the first place. And now, they never will. 2. People don't remember you because you disappeared. They remember you because you're great. A man spent years working at a company. He wasn't the loudest in the room, but he was the one people counted on. He delivered results, solved problems, and made things run smoothly. But life pulled him elsewhere. He had to leave. And when he did, something changed. Everyone felt it. The workflow slowed. The small issues he used to handle started piling up. People who never acknowledged his presence suddenly realized how much he had mattered. Not because he made a dramatic exit, not because he left messages demanding recognition, but because his presence had been irreplaceable. Now imagine another man, one who was just there. He showed up, did the bare minimum, and avoided responsibility. One day, he quit. And you know what happened? Nothing. No one noticed. No one cared. His absence was just an empty seat. Because he had left no real impact. And that's the truth you need to understand. People don't remember you because you disappeared. They remember you because you mattered. Some believe that blocking someone, deleting their number, or vanishing from social media will make them unforgettable. That cutting off communication will suddenly make an ex or former friend realize their worth. But here's the reality. If they didn't value you before, your disappearance won't change that. The people who are remembered aren't the ones who left. They're the ones who were great while they were there. You don't become unforgettable by vanishing. You become unforgettable by becoming irreplaceable. Think about the people you truly miss, the ones who had an impact on your life. Do you miss them because they left, or because what they brought into your life was unique? A high-value man doesn't need to disappear to make a statement. His presence is already a statement. He doesn't have to announce his departure for people to feel his absence. His energy, his actions, his impact, those who do the work for him. A great restaurant doesn't need to beg for customers to return. People come back because they know the quality is unmatched. A strong man doesn't need to chase those who left, because those who truly valued him never would have walked away in the first place. If you want people to notice when you're gone, give them a reason to. Be the kind of person whose presence adds value, changes the dynamic, and leaves a mark. A person whose standards, discipline, and ambition elevate the people around them. A man of strength, resilience, and action isn't forgotten. Not because he left, but because no one else can fill his role. And the ones who are easily replaced, they're the ones who are easily forgotten. Disappearing, blocking, cutting people off, these are passive acts. They don't build you. They don't make you better. They don't create an impact. They only provide the illusion of power. But power isn't in retreat. Power is in presence. A musician who never improves, who plays the same old songs the same way, becomes background noise. But the one who refines his craft, who takes risks, who brings something unique, he is remembered. A team doesn't regret cutting a player who was average, who never pushed himself, who was just there to collect a paycheck. But they do regret losing the player who made a difference. The one who put in the extra hours. The one who raised the standard for everyone around him. You don't need to tell people you're valuable. Your life should make it obvious. You don't need to announce your absence. Your presence should be missed. So instead of deleting your profile, build your presence in reality. Instead of proving a point becomes undeniable. Instead of focusing on what they think, focus on who you're becoming. If you're constantly evolving, constantly improving, constantly becoming more, people will remember you, even if they try not to. A high-value man never worries about someone forgetting him. He knows that the right people never will. He focuses on what he can control, his growth, his mindset, his mission. You can spend your time hoping they'll wake up one day and realize what they lost, or you can make sure you're too great to be ignored. Do you want to make an impact? Don't vanish. Evolve. Do you want them to regret losing you? Don't hide. Thrive. One day when they look back, make sure you're so far ahead that they can't even reach you anymore. 3. No one regrets losing someone who had no value. A man who knows his worth never begs to be chosen. Imagine this. 2 employees leave a company on the same day. One had been essential, solving problems, bringing in results, and making the company better. The other, he just clocked in, did the bare minimum, and went home. When the first man leaves, everyone feels it. Workloads pile up, deadlines get missed, and people struggle to adjust. But when the second man leaves, no one even notices. That's the difference between value and convenience. People don't regret losing what they don't find valuable. They regret losing what they can't replace. If you had to convince someone of your worth, they never saw it to begin with. If you had to fight for their attention, you were never a priority, just an option. And if you had to beg to be treated right, you were never respected. That's why real power isn't in making someone regret losing you. It's in making yourself irreplaceable. Think about relationships. A woman doesn't regret losing a man who chased her like a puppy, bending over backward to gain her approval. But she does regret losing the man who had options, yet still chose her. The man who was valuable enough to walk away. The man who was strong enough not to beg for a place in her life. If people replace you without hesitation, you are never important to them. You are just a convenience. And when something is convenient, it's disposable. Look at athletes. A team doesn't regret cutting a player who was average, who didn't push himself, who was just there to collect a paycheck. But they do regret losing the player who made a difference. The one who put in the extra hours. The one who raised the standard for everyone around him. Or think about a restaurant. If a restaurant provides forgettable service and mediocre food, people will move on to the next option without a second thought. But if that restaurant offered something unique, something exceptional, then its closure will leave a void. People will talk about how great it was. They'll remember how it stood apart from the rest. The same applies to work, friendships, and every aspect of life. If your absence doesn't leave a void, you weren't contributing much in the first place. If your silence doesn't make people wonder, you weren't saying anything meaningful to begin with. If people move on without hesitation, they never really value you. So instead of trying to make them regret, make yourself unforgettable. Make yourself impossible to replace. That doesn't happen by blocking them. That doesn't happen by sulking in silence. That happens by becoming someone they wish they still had access to, but no longer can. If you're a man who is disciplined, ambitious, strong, and constantly improving, people will notice your absence. Not because you left, but because what you built can't be filled by just anyone. A musician who never improves, who plays the same old songs the same way, becomes background noise. But the one who refines his craft, who takes risks, who brings something unique, he is remembered. You don't need to prove your value to people who overlooked it. You need to become the kind of man who never needs to prove anything. A great restaurant doesn't need to beg for customers to return. People come back because they know the quality is unmatched. A strong man doesn't need to chase those who left, because those who truly valued him never would have walked away in the first place. A high-value man never worries about someone forgetting him. He knows that the right people never will. He focuses on what he can control: his growth, his mindset, his mission. The solution? Focus on becoming irreplaceable. Get in shape, not for them, but for yourself. Build your skills, not to impress them, but to secure your own future. Elevate your standards, not for approval, but because you refuse to settle for less. You can spend your time hoping they'll wake up one day and realize what they lost. Or you can make sure you're too great to be ignored. One day, they might look back. One day, they might realize what they lost. But by then, you'll be too far ahead to care. 4. They don't fear losing you. They fear losing control. Have you ever noticed how some people don't seem to care when they mistreat you, but the moment you stop responding, they suddenly panic? It's not because they love you. It's not because they care. It's because they lost control over you. When you disappear, when you go silent, when you no longer react, their mind doesn't ask, where did they go? Their mind screams, why can't I control them anymore? People don't fear losing you. They fear losing their grip on you. They fear losing the certainty that you're still emotionally invested. The comfort of knowing that no matter what they do, you'll still be there, still hoping, still waiting. And that's why they play games. That's why they send mixed signals. That's why they keep you guessing, because control is what they truly crave. Think about it. A woman doesn't necessarily regret leaving a man. She regrets when that man doesn't beg for her back. She doesn't panic because she lost him. She panics because he moved on without needing her validation. The moment he stops calling, the moment he stops trying, the moment he stops caring, that's when her mind spirals. Not because she suddenly values him, but because she no longer knows if she ever had power over him to begin with. The same happens with a toxic boss. A manipulative boss doesn't care when an employee threatens to quit, but the moment that employee actually leaves, suddenly, they're irreplaceable. Suddenly, the boss is reaching out, offering better terms, trying to regain control. Not because they respect the employee, but because they fear losing their authority over them. A company doesn't fear losing customers. It fears losing its influence over them. That's why they use psychological tricks, limited time offers, loyalty programs, and fear-based marketing to keep you emotionally attached. They know that once you stop engaging, they lose leverage. And this applies to people too. Someone who is used to controlling you, whether through love, guilt, or manipulation, will never fear your absence. They will fear your indifference, because when you stop reacting, you steal their power. That's why silence is the most powerful response. If someone insults you and you don't react, they lose their weapon. If an ex expects you to fight for them and you just walk away, they question everything. A person who controls you through your emotions needs you to engage. They need you to respond. They need to see that their actions still have an effect. When you don't respond, when you simply move forward, they are left alone with their own insecurity. So let me ask you, what happens when they push your buttons and nothing happens? They expect you to argue. They expect you to beg. They expect you to react. But instead you give them nothing. And that's when the panic sets in. Because now they don't know where they stand with you. They don't know if you care. They don't know if you'll come back. They don't know if they've lost control forever. That's when they start trying. That's when they start chasing. Not because they value you, but because they value their influence over you. That's when they suddenly want to talk. Suddenly want to check in. Suddenly want to test if they still have control. And that's when you need to walk away for good. Because here's the harsh truth. If they truly valued you, they wouldn't have risked losing you. If they truly respected you, they wouldn't have needed to manipulate you. If they truly cared, they wouldn't have needed to control you. A high-value man doesn't need to play games. He doesn't need to manipulate. He simply removes access. No warnings. No explanations, no closure, just gone. And that's when they realize you were the one in control all along. People don't regret losing you. They regret losing the control they had over you. So the real power move? Stop making yourself available for manipulation. You don't have to block them. You don't have to delete their number. You don't have to prove a point. You just have to stop engaging. The moment you stop giving them control, you win. The moment you stop reacting, you become untouchable. Because control is only effective when you allow yourself to be controlled. So stop trying to make them regret losing you. Instead, make them regret ever thinking they had power over you in the first place. And when they finally realize it, you'll be too far ahead to care. 5. You don't need to close the door. Just become someone they can't reach. Blocking them, deleting their number, unfollowing their every move, it makes them think you're angry, that you're hurt, that you still care enough to take action against them. But true power isn't in shutting the door loudly. It's in making them realize they no longer have access to your world. You don't have to cut them off to prove a point. You just have to elevate yourself to a place where they can no longer reach you. That's what truly haunts people. Not being blocked, not being ignored, but realizing that they don't even exist in your mind anymore. When someone wrongs you, the instinct is to retaliate, to slam the door shut, to make sure they know you're done. But what does that really accomplish? It still keeps the focus on them. It still makes them feel important. And that's the last thing you want. Instead, let them feel the absence of you without any dramatic exits. Let them wonder. Let them question. Let them realize on their own that you've moved on so far, so fast, that their existence has become irrelevant to you. A man of value doesn't announce his departure. He just stops engaging. And when he does, the world that once included them becomes a place they no longer belong. Imagine an old club you used to go to. The kind where you knew everyone, where you felt comfortable. Then one day, everything changes. You show up, and suddenly you don't recognize the people inside. The atmosphere is different. You no longer fit in. And in that moment, you realize this place has moved on without you. That's what happens when you grow. When you evolve. When you raise your standards. The people who once took you for granted, who thought they knew you, who assumed they could always walk back into your life. They find out, too late, that they no longer belong in the world you've built. And that's the real punishment. Not slamming the door, not blocking them, not showing them you're upset, but letting them see, with their own eyes, that you're no longer someone they can reach. A woman expects you to beg when she leaves. She expects you to be upset, to try and convince her to stay. But what happens when you don't? What happens when you simply keep moving, keep improving, and never look back? She questions everything. She thought she had power over you. She thought she was irreplaceable. But now she's left wondering if she ever truly mattered. And that's when the regret sets in. Nothing unsettles a person more than realizing they were never as important to you as they thought. It's the same in every area of life. An employer who undervalued you suddenly realizes your worth when you leave for a better opportunity. A toxic friend who took advantage of your kindness suddenly wishes they had treated you better when they see you thriving without them. And none of it happens because you cut them off. It happens because you become someone they no longer have access to. That's what true detachment looks like. No need for anger, no need for bitterness, no need for grand statements. Just an unshakable focus on your own growth, your own success, your own path. Because when you level up, you don't have to remove people from your life. They remove themselves. Not because you blocked them, not because you told them off, but because they no longer recognize the person you've become. The version of you that accepted less, that tolerated disrespect, that waited around for their validation, that version of you no longer exists. And now they're stuck, trying to find a way back into a space where they don't belong. That's why they check your social media. That's why they send messages after months of silence. That's why they try to bump into you unexpectedly. They want to know if they still have a place in your life, if they still have a way to pull you back into their control. But they don't, because you don't live there anymore. You've moved on, and in doing so, you've left them behind. And that's the ultimate realization for them. That's the real loss. Not because you forced it, not because you made a scene, but because you outgrew them. So stop worrying about closing doors. Stop worrying about making a statement. Just focus on building the kind of life that naturally filters out those who don't belong. The ones who should have treated you better will finally understand, but by then, it won't matter. Because when they finally look back, when they finally realize what they lost, Make sure you're too far ahead for them to ever catch up. 6. Don't react. Make them a stranger. When someone walks away from you, the worst reaction is to chase, to explain, to plead, or to seek revenge. The most powerful response is no response at all. The greatest punishment for those who took you for granted isn't your anger, it's your indifference. Because when someone no longer exists in your mind, that's when they truly lose. If they can forget you the moment you stop reaching out, it means they never truly valued you in the first place. If their life moves on effortlessly while you're stuck replaying memories, then the truth is clear. They were never invested the way you were. And that's exactly why you need to stop giving them space in your mind. They don't need your reaction. They don't deserve your explanation. They don't need to hear you say you're done. They need to feel it. Imagine running into them at an airport. You see them standing there. Maybe they see you too. Do you feel the urge to prove something? Do you want to show them how great you're doing? If so, you haven't truly let go. Because letting go isn't about making them regret. It's about reaching a point where they don't matter enough for you to care. You don't need to block them. You don't need to delete their number. You just need to stop engaging. Let them become nothing more than a face in the crowd. That's the real power move. They expect drama. They expect tears, frustration, and long messages filled with emotion, because that tells them they still matter to you. But when they get nothing, when you move on with quiet confidence, when their name becomes just another name in a sea of people, that's when they start to feel the loss. Think about how the human mind works. When you lose something and you know exactly why, there's closure, there's understanding. But when something just disappears, without warning, without explanation, the mind can't let go. It replays everything. It questions every decision. And that's exactly what happens when you refuse to react. A manipulative ex doesn't regret leaving you. They regret it when you stop chasing them. A toxic boss doesn't miss you. They miss the control they had over you. A fake friend doesn't feel bad for betraying you. They only care when they realize you've replaced them without hesitation. When someone wrongs you, they expect you to hold on, to cling to memories, to keep reacting in ways that feed their ego. But when you truly move on, when you see them and feel nothing, when their existence becomes irrelevant to your journey, that's when they start questioning everything. It's not about ignoring them. It's about reaching a point where ignoring them isn't a strategy. It's just the natural consequence of who you've become. A high-value man doesn't waste time seeking validation. He doesn't play mind games to make someone miss him. He simply elevates himself to a level that they can no longer reach. He shifts his focus from proving his worth to becoming someone who never needed their approval in the first place. If they try to provoke you, if they try to get a reaction, if they try to bait you into proving yourself, shrug it off. Let them sit in their own confusion. Let them wonder why you don't care. Let them feel the weight of your absence in a way that words could never make them understand. That's why the best response is no response. Not because you're trying to manipulate, not because you want them to miss you, but because they are now just another stranger in your life. And when they finally realize it, you'll be too far ahead to even notice. 7. The greatest power isn't proving yourself. It's not needing to prove anything. A man walked away from a toxic relationship. No explanations, no dramatic goodbyes, no need to justify his decision. He didn't post about it. He didn't send a long message detailing how he was mistreated. He simply left and never looked back. Months later, she tried to reach out. She sent vague texts, tested the waters, and even tried to make him jealous. But he never responded. Not because he was bitter, not because he was angry, but because he had moved on so completely, proving anything to her was beneath him. That's power, not in making them regret, not in crafting the perfect response, but in not needing to respond at all. Every time you try to explain yourself, you're still playing their game. Every time you attempt to prove your worth, you're still seeking validation. And that means they still have control. Because a man who truly knows his value never has to convince anyone else of it. The world teaches you to fight for attention, to prove your worth, to seek recognition. But the truth is, The moment you need to prove yourself, you've already lost. Think about the strongest men in history. They didn't beg for approval. They didn't go around explaining why they deserved respect. They simply became men of undeniable value. Their actions spoke for them. Their presence demanded respect. Not through words, but through the lives they built. If you walk into a room and feel the need to make people see you, to make them recognize your worth, you're still operating from a place of insecurity. A real man doesn't need to announce himself. He doesn't need to explain why he belongs. He simply does. This applies to relationships, business, and life itself. If you're still trying to convince someone to see your value, you're already giving them power over you. If you're chasing after an ex, trying to make them see what they lost, you're still living in the past. If you're explaining to a boss why they should respect you, you've already lost leverage. Because the greatest power move isn't proving yourself, it's living in a way that makes proof unnecessary. Ask yourself this: are you proud of the life you're living? Do you wake up each morning knowing you are on the right path? Do your actions align with your values? If the answer is yes, you owe no one an explanation. Imagine a man who quietly builds his empire. He doesn't post about his grind. He doesn't tell people how hard he works. He doesn't need to, because when people see the results, the discipline, the strength, the success, they know. A weak man seeks external validation. A strong man builds an internal foundation so solid that outside opinions don't shake him. There's a reason kings don't argue with peasants. There's a reason the strongest warriors don't engage in petty battles. Because they don't need to. Their value is already established. If someone doubts your worth, let them. If someone questions your ability, let them wonder. If someone walks away because they don't see your greatness, don't chase them. Your job isn't to convince them. Your job is to become so undeniable that the question answers itself. The moment you start living with purpose, with discipline, with absolute certainty in who you are, people will notice. Not because you told them to, not because you argued for their respect, but because respect is earned, not demanded. A true man of value doesn't need to engage in battles that don't serve him. He doesn't waste time explaining himself to those who will never understand. He simply walks his path and lets the results speak for themselves. Think about the difference between a man who chases recognition and a man who earns it. The one who chases is constantly seeking approval, needing validation, and trying to get people to see him. The one who earns it doesn't care if people see him or not. He knows who he is, and that's why people respect him. Not because he begged for it, but because he embodied it. If you truly want to step into your power, stop explaining. Stop trying to make them see. Stop justifying your choices. Just become. Build your life, improve yourself. Elevate your mindset, and when people finally notice, when they finally realize what they overlooked, it won't matter. Because you won't need their recognition anymore. And that's why the greatest power isn't proving yourself. It's not needing to prove anything at all. 8. Your happiness doesn't depend on them. It's in your hands. Who holds the key to your happiness? If the answer is anyone but yourself, then you've already lost. If your mood depends on how someone treats you, if your confidence is tied to their validation, if your peace is disrupted by their absence, then you've handed them the remote control to your emotions. And that's a power no one should ever have over you. The moment you let someone else dictate your happiness, you've given them the ability to dictate your suffering. If they can make you feel whole, they can also make you feel empty. If their presence brings you joy, then their absence brings you pain. That's why true power comes from within. Because the strongest man isn't the one who takes revenge, he's the one who no longer cares. Think about the last time someone hurt you. Maybe they walked away. Maybe they betrayed you. Maybe they made you feel like you weren't enough. And what did you do? Did you sit there, replaying every moment, wondering what went wrong? Did you let their actions consume you? Did you let their choices steal your peace? If so, then they still have control over you. Even in their absence, they still win because they still occupy space in your mind. But here's the truth. No one can take anything from you unless you allow it. No one can make you feel abandoned unless you see them as your source of belonging. No one can make you feel rejected unless you place your worth in their hands. And no one, not a partner, not a friend, not even family, can make you whole. Because happiness isn't something you receive, it's something you build. Look around. The world is filled with people chasing happiness. They think it's in money, in relationships, in status. They tell themselves, once I have this, I'll finally be happy. But what happens when they get it? They want more. The car that once excited them is now just another vehicle. The relationship they once dreamed of now feels routine. The success they crave no longer satisfies them. Because happiness was never in those things to begin with. It was always inside them. Or rather, it was missing inside them, and they were hoping something external could fill the void. But that's not how it works. You don't wait for motivation to go to the gym. You just go. You don't wait to feel like working. You just start. Happiness works the same way. It's not something you wait for, it's something you train. A disciplined man doesn't rely on feelings to guide his actions. He builds habits. And happiness, real happiness, isn't about pleasure, it's about discipline. It's about controlling your mind instead of letting your mind control you. A weak man lets circumstances dictate his emotions. A strong man creates stability within himself, so no matter what happens outside, he remains unmoved. He doesn't need someone to treat him right to feel worthy. He doesn't need success to feel valuable. He doesn't need love to feel complete, because his peace is an inside job. This is why Stoics have always said, if you wish to be unshakable, wish for nothing outside your control. If your happiness depends on something external, you are always at the mercy of forces you can't control. You'll always be waiting for the right person, the right opportunity, the right moment. But a man who takes full responsibility for his emotions, he stops waiting and starts creating. So if you've been searching for happiness in someone else, stop. If you've been hoping someone will come back to make you feel whole, stop. If you've been giving people the power to lift you up and tear you down, take it back, because no one is coming to save you. And that's the best news you'll ever hear. It means you don't have to wait, you don't have to depend, you don't have to chase. You can start right now. Build a life that brings you fulfillment regardless of who stays or who leaves. Develop a mindset that remains calm regardless of what happens. Create a foundation so strong that no setback, no rejection, no loss can shake you. Because happiness isn't found, it's forged. And the man who understands that, he becomes untouchable. Everything you've just heard comes down to one simple truth. Your power lies in your control over yourself. You don't need to block, chase, or prove anything to anyone. You don't need validation, revenge, or closure. You just need to rise above. True strength isn't loud. It isn't in reactions, explanations, or seeking recognition. It's in the silence of a man who knows his worth. The man who walks away not because he's weak, but because he refuses to be controlled. The man who builds himself so well that those who once took him for granted can no longer reach him. Your happiness is yours to create. Your peace is yours to protect. The moment you stop seeking external approval, you gain something even more valuable: freedom. Freedom from the opinions of others. Freedom from regret. Freedom from the weight of needing to be understood. And that's the lesson here. Live so well that proving yourself becomes unnecessary. Become so disciplined that emotions no longer dictate your actions. Move forward so powerfully that by the time they realize your worth, you won't even care. Now, take this lesson and apply it. What's one situation in your life where you need to take back control? Share your thoughts below. Your story might help someone else find their strength.